Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy week 7 with the Diamond Heart Project, and just coming together and supporting you in this week. And this we talked about in this 12-week program. The first 6 weeks we really go through building a practice and really getting settled in our self-love and self-care, and really grounding into how we choose to honor ourselves energetically, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so hopefully that foundation has been set, or is beginning to be set, where you are understanding what practices work best for you, what resonates, what doesn't resonate, and ways that you can nurture yourself. And as you walk in the day, you do your practices so you feel you're well. So when you walk out in the world, you can give infinitely of yourself because your well is already full. And you're not looking to get anything from anyone, and you're able to kind of be out of your own way. And so in that, we're going to dive into the RENXUE pattern work. And this is one of the first weeks that we really dive into some deeper spaces of being really honest with ourselves and being able to look at some things without judgment. I've talked before about when things come up, the best thing you can do is not judge yourself or anyone else or anything else. You're able to see some things and the clarity around why things are happening or why things are coming forth, because there's no judgment attached to it. There's no limited belief attached to it. And so this RENXUE process or modality is going to require you to really have no judgment around yourself, to really look at some things, and to be really honest with yourself. And this is an activation point to really do some deep inner work. So, this RENXUE program or modality was invented by this Chi master, and it's out of the Chinese lineage, and the Qigong that we do is a stretch of that, or an extension of that. And many of you heard the story, but he was orphaned as a child, and he was taken in by these Buddhist monasteries, and lived in a couple ones throughout his life, from the age of a child to his adulthood, and got really deep into different Buddhist practices and different Qi practices around how to work with ourselves energetically, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And he worked with many people that would come and see him more as an adult, and he would help them remove medical ailments out of the system, some terminal. And he would have these beautiful, profound experiences with them, but then they would return 3 to 5 to 4 to 7 years later with the same ailment. And he began to recognize that these ailments were beyond just physicality or the physical being. They had to deal with a consciousness and a pattern of belief systems and a pattern of ways of operating that he wanted to dive deeper into getting into. So, like a lot of masters on the planet that receive information to give into the humanity, he channeled this process. And this process is called the RENXUE, and RENXUE. And it's really about how to look at conscious patterns of ourselves and shift them. And there's many different levels to this, if you want to call it that, but we're going to work on the base level of looking at human patterns, the 10 fundamental patterns of the human consciousness. And it's not just tailored to you, but you'll see how these things show up in your life. And so it might feel personal, even though it's not. And understand that our consciousness is like a software. It's like a hard drive that only runs the programs you choose to put in it. It has no judgment around doing something that's good or bad for you. It's doing what it's been guided to do. And so all we're doing is for you able to witness this and look at this from that aspect of being a computer program. We're just deleting the program, putting a new program in. And if you can have any less attachment to that, then that would be great. Around realizing that sometimes, somewhere in your life, this pattern of behavior served you in some moment. And so, but your consciousness is like, oh, this works for you. So when this alignment, or when a moment or experience or situation presents itself that looks like the one that did when you were 6, or when you were 3, or when you were 21, we're going to go ahead and respond the same way as we did in that moment, because that helped you in some way, shape, or how. And so when you realize that, and that software of operation or response to an experience gets put into your consciousness, it just goes, oh, this is where we go to when this happens. And so it's less personal and just more about understanding how we respond to moments in our life. So that being said, we can always talk about this on more of a personal level on the integration calls, but I want to give you the 10 the 10 fundamental ways of the human consciousness of patterns that show up in how we operate. It's not the top 10, just seems to be like a lot of different ways all kind of fall under these 10 categories. So first one we're going to talk about is polarized thinking. Like, where have you found yourself in polarized thinking? And when I go through these descriptions, I highly recommend that you sit and like see what these descriptions mean to you, because there's no right or wrong definition. There's just a description around what these can show up, and they can show up many different ways in your life. And I will talk to you in person or on the live calls around how they showed up in my life and how they kind of weave and have these roots that connect to each other in different ways. So we understand what the pattern is. You can see how it shows up in different ways. Sometimes we can't see it. And that's why we have pattern coaches and mentors that help us with that as well. So polarized thinking. You see it in life, good and bad, red and black, blue and red, politics, this space of duality, polarized thinking, sports teams have to pick a team, right? These polarized thinking around, it has to be this way or that way, and there's no middle ground. And so that's one way. That's one fundamental pattern, and it shows up in different ways. And when you really understand these patterns, you'll see how they subtly show up sometimes just as you're walking down the street. Maybe it's you see a car and you're like, I like that car, but I don't like it in blue, I like it in black. Or whatever. Like, it's a judgment. Not saying that you don't like a different color. That's beautiful, but it's the same car. Just like all human beings are the same. Just have different paint jobs on the outside. And so...
unknown caller.
Anyways, we get into that space of like polarized thinking, and that's not that best of an example, but that's an example. And so the next one we're talking about is overgeneralization. Again, you see this in relation sometimes to politics or other things, like generalization. Like, when you might hear like women say, oh, all men do this, or men say all women do this, or husbands say all wives do this. Like, no, that's not. That's a generalization, overgeneralization of things. Or when people are, along more the lines of racism, where they generalize one set of race doing one action, everyone in that race does the same thing. It's out there. And so we overgeneralize, right? Or, or making statements like when you're working on the car, like, oh, I always break something. Do you? Do you always break something? Or is it just the last couple of times that you worked on the car you broke something? Right? It's like being very clear with like how you communicate with yourself and with others. With yourself, the most important communication, most important is how you communicate to yourself. And these patterns have a big way in like how you communicate to yourself. So overgeneralization. So number 1, polarized thinking. Number 2, overgeneralization. Number 3 is unfounded suspicions. Things like, can also be assumptions, right? But, there's a lot of similarities in the ones I'm going to list. So unfounded suspicions, like you suspect something you have no proof of, and it goes into that space. This showed up for me in past relationships when I was younger around not trusting the feminine. And once I finally did the work in myself, really realizing like I wasn't trusting the feminine with myself, it stopped showing up in relationships. But there would be unfounded suspicions, when you're a teenager, not giving it, not to say it's all right when you're a teenager, but like those things of like, who is she with? Is she talking to somebody, right? Unfounded suspicions. And then you accuse them of stuff without even knowing anything, right? That's just one example. But our mind does it very. Those are micro versions of it, or macro versions of it. There are micro versions of unfounded suspicions. Like, I wonder why that person at the counters, the clerk at the grocery store was being short with me. And then you come up with suspicions of why she's being that. Maybe she's just having a bad day. Maybe she got a call or her kid's sick and trying to figure out how to get out of work. It has nothing to do with you. So, anyways, we can see where these things show up in life. And this is a very, very deep thing we're going to do here. But I'm just giving you like the surface level before we dive into it lively. Number 4 has to do with negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism. I think those are pretty much self-explanatory. Like when you have a moment that would be challenging and you withdraw from it. I'm not talking about taking a step back or like like taking a moment to respond to them, but like a withdrawal, like, it also comes under number 8, hiding and avoiding. And so like I said, you're going to see some overlapping with these ones. And I know I listed all this in the email, but just want to kind of talk about it. So negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, pessimism, like, like, you're walking into the house and you have the bag groceries and you drop the bag groceries, I laugh. Some people might be like, oh gosh, drop the groceries. Like, anyways, you can just see where these things show up. I'm not saying you don't have emotions or feelings about dropping the groceries, but the point is, like, where do you go in your mind? Or do you go to a negative self-talk because, like, the handle broke on the groceries, the paper handle broke because the groceries were heavy? That's all that happened. Like, creating any more story around your mind or anything around any of it is not doing yourself any good. And so that can be an example of number 4. Number 5 is fixed expectations, preconceptions, taking things for granted, and false assumptions. Like, fixed expectations. Like, you go to meet a new friend and you think it's going to go really well, and it's not. Your expectation how it's supposed to go, or a conversation with a lover, or with your wife, or with a partner, or a call with a business, potential business candidate. Either way, like, these things go that way. So having fixed expectations is something that you really want to watch out for on how it goes. Taking things for granted, false assumptions. False assumptions can be, I've had this in relationships before when a partner was like made of a lot of assumptions, and it really like threw a wrench in the process and in the container of our relationship. It really like made some static, assuming things without communicating, and so it really like stifles the connection with a business partner, with a lover, with a friend, with whatever it is for you. Like, having any kind of false assumptions around how things should or shouldn't go, or what you assume should be, compared to just communicating and being direct, so that shows up many ways as well. Number 6 is greediness. And so we all think greediness, a lot of people attach that to finances or money, but greediness can be a lot of things. Greediness can be is like, you go to a family dinner and all of a sudden they put out your favorite dish and you take more than everybody else because you want to make sure you get enough of your favorite dish, right? Nothing wrong with it. It isn't a judgment around you doing it. It's just more important, like, know what you're up to. Like, it isn't a fact of like stopping these patterns of behavior. It's knowing where they're coming from. And so we're going to dive deeper with this work into where these maybe have an attachment to, an experience in the past, maybe emotion they're connected to, and really doing some deep work. There's an opportunity here for all of us to really go really deep, really fast, to really connect to some things of this and have a deeper understanding about ourselves. So there's that. Self-centeredness, that can show up in many ways, I had to really look at this one. I'm an only child, and so not that I want to connect a story to it, but I'm an only child, and so growing up, I didn't have to think about sharing food with a brother or sister. So when I got into like a roommatehood, right, it was had to like transition a little bit, like around that. It wasn't that I wasn't being inconsiderate of them. It just wasn't, I never had to think about another brother or sister in the house to like share something with, right? And so had to really work through that in a beautiful way, when I was younger. And so it really helped out. So being able to see that as a pattern compared to judging myself around, self-centeredness. Now, if you're doing it, if you're not doing it, there's some things to look at. But self-centeredness is number 7. 8 is hiding and avoiding. This is probably one of the most well-known fundamental human pattern that's in the human consciousness. Hiding and avoiding can be like going through a challenging moment or conversation and you go in your room and take space, which is beautiful. That's not hiding and avoiding, but or somebody's having a tough conversation and you like rear away from it because you want to avoid it. Substance use, addiction could be attached to hiding and avoiding from maybe emotion or experience they haven't wanted to process in their childhood or in the present. It's a deep one. We'll go really deep on this one. We're going to spend 2 weeks on these because there's some really deep work that we can do with this. So just know it's there. Number 9 is stubbornness. And so this is one I had to really work through. And it's a beautiful pattern, but it's there. And so stubbornness. And fight for dominance. Like sometimes we have that inner need to be right. And this showed up with my relationship with my son's mother, you know? And I really had to look at that. And it was for a while, there was many years where I didn't see it. And then I started doing the pattern work and got to see it. And so there's that fight for dominance, you know, and it's not always fight like in conflict, but it could be in this mindset of like, you know, you have a conversation with a coworker that's presenting a different idea than you do for the same solution, or you have a conversation with your partner or friend or whatever it is, and after you walk away the conversation, your mind is justifying all the ways you were right, and it's just in this loop of like more facts, more points, more memories of like why you're right, you know. And again, nothing wrong with that happening. Just know why that's happening, and so you can have more control over your consciousness and how you operate in the world. So these are really powerful. And I listed the 4 steps of changing patterns. So once we can go and identify some things within ourselves, we're going to go through a process of changing and you know, and it's more about replacing. So it's really simple about like your willingness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and then replacing. And you can do it in less than 3 seconds. It's very simple, very easy, but diving down the rabbit hole of the patterns is a little more challenging. But we'll talk more about the replacing. And so we always replace with the quality of the heart. The 5 that I use are trust, openness, humility, true respect, and love. And those are the 5 I work with, but you can work with as many 5 as you want. And they're always in my back pocket energetically. I listed some on the email. You know, there are different moments where those different qualities of the heart will show up for that replacement. And it could be the same pattern, but needs a different replacement at that moment of how it's showing up for you. And so we'll talk about that. But I want to give you kind of the skeleton or the foundation of how this is going to work. And we're going to dive deeper into it for the next 2 weeks. And I highly recommend you do a lot of that Qigong practice we did on the Monday recording. It's going to really support that. This Qigong practice goes right along with this pattern work. So I mean, it's a RENXUE Qigong. Like it literally is it's a design from Yanzi, the guy who designed this RENXUE program. It's Qigong he put together to go along with the pattern work. So look at that. All right. And then the last part of the video is going to be about surrender. You know, surrender is a practice, and you know, there's no way to tell you how to surrender. There might be moments in your life where it show up where you realize you didn't surrender. Or moments where you realize it's an opportunity to surrender. But this is just this week about really feeling what does surrender feel like to you? Surrender does not mean the white flag and giving up. And I know our society, based on the war context or war belief, that's what surrender is about. And that's not what surrender is. And those of you who sat with medicine, you know about surrender, like surrendering into the medicine, the Kambo, ayahuasca, boga, hape, all these kind of things. So surrender. And so this is a practice of like feel into what surrender feels like in your body, and really what the context of it is and how to really connect to it. And we'll move from there. And this is going to go right along with the pattern work. So blessings to all of you. Beautiful work. And thank you for receiving this video, and talk to you. Love you soon.